This is Roger with iGadget Geek. Today we're going to have a comparison video. We're going to look at 3 of the latest flagship phones from Android on AT&T. Now we have here on the far left the AT&T HTC One M8. Here in the middle I have the AT&T Samsung Galaxy S5 in copper gold. And then here on the right hand side I have the AT&T Samsung Galaxy S5 Active in the camo green. So basically what I want to do is kind of run down and kind of give you guys a comparison. You may be trying to decide between one of these 3 phones for your next phone purchase or your upgrade. So if you're upgrading and you're signing a 2-year contract, the AT&T HTC One M8 is going to run you $99 with a 2-year contract. The Galaxy S5 is going to run you $199 with a 2-year contract. And the Galaxy S5 Active is going to run you $199 with a 2-year contract. Now, if you want to take advantage of just purchasing those outright with no contract whatsoever, the actual HTC One M8 is going to run you $669 outright with no contract or anything. The Galaxy S5 will run you $649, and the S5 Active will run you $659. Now, of course, you can take advantage of interest-free financing from AT&T, and those payments, depending on actually which phone you purchase, will run you anywhere from about $27 on up to about $33. So let's go ahead and take a look at the physical differences here between these 3 phones. Of course, the M8 is the only all-aluminum bodied phone. Now, the S5 Active does have a lot of aluminum on it, but the actual back panel is still plastic. So by far, if you want an all-aluminum phone, the M8 is going to be your all-aluminum construction, but the S5 Active is definitely going to have the more rugged finish. It is waterproof, just like the S5, so both the S5 and the S5 Active give you that waterproof feature. In other words, both of these can be submerged in water up to 1 meter for 30 minutes with no problems, as long as you have all the ports at the bottom and the back battery cover is secured properly. Now, as far as camera, that's where the M8, in my opinion, is lacking. It has their ultra pixel, which basically is a 5-megapixel camera. Now, it does take some fantastic photos for a 5-megapixel camera with its second little lens up here that allows you to refocus after the picture and all of that kind of really cool features built into it. But at the end of the day, it is still just a 5-megapixel camera, and there's only so much that you can do with that. Now, the S5 and the S5 Active, as far as hardware goes, are pretty much identical. They both have a 2800 milliamp hour battery, and they also share the same camera. And both of them have, if I'm not mistaken, let me double check, it is a 16 megapixel camera on both of those. So they both basically have the same camera, same flash. These, you gain a heart rate monitor. You don't have any kind of secondary features like that. The S5 Active, you gain some really cool active features with the active button. You can come in here and actually touch the active button, and you have your barometer, your compass, and all of that kind of cool features that you don't have on the regular S5 that you gain on the S5 Active. So that's a really nice feature. Now, the S5 and the S5 Active both have a 5.1-inch screen. Both are Super AMOLED and at a full 1080p. The M8, or the HTC One M8, actually is a 5-inch screen, but it too is at a full 1080p. Now, I have all 3 of these unlocked and open to their home screen. Now, the S5 I've got just running its stock TouchWiz. I've changed a few things. Now, this is my personal S5 Active. I do have it modified a little bit. I'm not actually using the TouchWiz launcher. I'm using the Nova launcher. And here on the left-hand side, my M8 is running the latest version of the Viper ROM. But what I wanted to do, you still get basically an overall feel for what it looks like to use these. The S5 and the S5 Active are virtually going to be exactly the same when it comes to software, except for that activity zone that I already mentioned. Now, the M8 is more of a more of a stock kind of feel to Android. It definitely does have its skin, but the actual notification is more of a stock KitKat. So you have your first pull down is your notification, and then you can touch over here and you can actually go into all of your quick settings and tiles. The S5 and S5 Active have your quick tiles at the top. There again, though, you can expand those, rearrange those however you would like. Now, the S5, S5 Active, both do not have on-screen buttons. The S5 has a physical home button that also has a fingerprint scanner, where the S5 Active has 3 physical buttons for your recent, your home, and your back. Your recent and back on the S5 are capacitive, and they are lit up. On the M8, they are all on-screen buttons. So there's some very big physical differences there on how you actually use the phone. The S5 has a USB 3 charging port, where the S5 Active and the HTC One M8 both use just a standard micro USB. The M8 has 32 gigs of built-in storage. The S5, S5 Active have 16 gigs. Now, all 3 of these, you can augment that storage with a micro SD card up to 128 gigabytes on all 3 of these phones. So, roughly, you can pretty much expand your storage to just about anything you would need, but if you're looking at base built-in storage, the M8 definitely has more. Now, as far as speakers, the M8 has, of course, its boom sound, these 2 huge forward-facing speakers, a 5-megapixel camera on the front, so it actually has a same size megapixel camera on the back as it does the front, and that forward-facing camera is a wide angle, so they've really designed that for a lot of selfies. Now, of course, the S5 and the S5 Active both have a 2-megapixel forward-facing camera, but it will record video in HD, so you do not have any problems there. You can get into the performance differences, and that really is going to be more of a personal preference on what an individual prefers. You're either going to prefer the Sense overlay or the TouchWiz overlay. Now, as far as performance, they all 3 have the same 2 gigs of RAM, and they all 3 have a quad-core processor. The same processor, in fact, if I'm not mistaken, let me double-check that. Yes, they both are running the Qualcomm Snapdragon 801. Now, of course, the HTC One M8 is clocked at 2.3, and the S5 and S5 Active is clocked at 2.5. So they are using the same quad-core processor. The M8 is clocked just a little bit lower than the S5 and the S5 Active. But all in all, what I really wanted to kind of give you guys was just kind of a base idea of what the main differences between these phones were. Physically, they're all very similar in size. Now, if you look at these in height, let me go ahead and line these up. As you can see right there, the M8 is, of course, a little bit taller than either of them. And that's due to, of course, that boom sound speakers. Those add quite a bit of height. As far as thickness goes, the S5 and the M8 are about the same thickness. Of course, the thickest one here is, of course, the S5 Active with its rugged exterior casing and everything, and they're about the same width, which is to be expected. They're virtually pretty much the same size screen. But any one of these 3 phones are going to be excellent for you. If you decide to purchase and upgrade your phone, any one of these would be a fantastic phone. And that has been my comparison video of the AT&T Galaxy S5 Active, the AT&T Galaxy S5, and the AT&T HTC One M8. And this has been Roger with iGadget Geek.